My name is Kate. I was 27 when my mum uninvited me from Thanksgiving and gave my seat to the man who once made me afraid to sleep. The text came 2 days before the holiday. We're keeping things peaceful this year. Hope you understand. There was no greeting, no mention of my name, just that one line followed by a smiley face that made my skin crawl. You know that feeling when your stomach drops before your brain catches up? That's what it felt like. And the silence after. That was worse. I reread the message 3 times in the hospital break room. Still in my scrubs. Still smelling faintly of antiseptic and latex. My mind wanted to rationalize it. Maybe she forgot punctuation. Maybe it was meant for someone else. But I knew better. Because this wasn't new. Not really. It was just the first time she said it so plainly. Every Thanksgiving had a twist. One year my plate got misplaced, and no one noticed I hadn't eaten. Another, she sat me at the folding card table in the laundry room, so the cousins could be together. This year I wasn't just being sidelined, I was being erased. I locked my phone and stared at the vending machine's reflection. I looked tired, not in the way you look after a double shift, but in the way people look after they've spent years trying to earn back a place they never should have lost. Back when I was little, Thanksgiving meant warmth. My grandfather's old plaid thermos on the porch. My dad trying and failing to carve the turkey straight. Laughter in every room. Before things changed. Before Mom started measuring presents in performance and love in loyalty to whoever could play nice with her illusions. I texted back, short and polite. Got it? Hope it's a good one. She didn't reply. 2 hours later, I was at the nurse's station updating a chart when my co-worker, Janelle, passed by with a coffee and said, "Oh, hey, saw your mum tagged you in a photo." My fingers froze on the keyboard. I opened the app. It was a pre-Thanksgiving dinner photo from my childhood home. The big dining table was set with gold-trimmed plates and burgundy candles. Everyone was there. Aunt Louisa, Cousin Nate, even Grandma June in her teal shawl. And him, standing next to my sister laughing like nothing had ever happened. He was wearing the sweater I bought him 2 winters ago. The one he'd thrown in my bathtub. During that night, I still can't talk about without shaking. I sat down hard in the nearest chair. I hadn't seen his face in 14 months. Not in person, not online, not even in passing. I didn't breathe. Not really. My chest just stalled, like my body didn't trust air anymore. Janelle must have noticed my reaction because she put the coffee down gently. "Kate, you okay?" I nodded. "Yeah, just tired." But inside, something was splitting. Not cracking. Splitting. Like something old and rotten had finally run out of excuses to stay whole. I stayed an hour later that shift, pretending I needed overtime. Anything to avoid going back to the apartment where the quiet had teeth. That night, lying on my mattress, still half-dressed, I stared at the ceiling fan and wondered how long someone could keep forgiving a family that kept choosing the people who broke you over the one who stayed silent about it. I used to think I was imagining it. But this time, she didn't forget. This time, she made room. Just not for me. The waiting room was too warm. One of those upscale therapy offices in a downtown medical tower with filtered water and calming playlists that never quite masked the hum of fluorescent lights. I sat on the edge of the grey velvet couch, coat still on, fingers twisted in the strap of my purse. Across from me, a water feature bubbled behind frosted glass. I could barely hear it over the noise in my own head. It had been 8 months since I'd last seen Dr. Heller. I hadn't meant to come back. Not really. I'd told myself I was fine. I was working, sleeping, eating, mostly. That counted for something. But then the photo, the message, the quiet cancellation of my place at the table. Now I was here again, heartbeat in my throat. "Kate?" Her voice was gentle but clear, slicing through the static. I stood too fast. "Yeah, hi." Her office hadn't changed. Abstract art, floor lamp in the corner, one plush chair across from the other, angled like they might talk to each other instead of the people sitting in them. I sank down slowly. My hands stayed in my lap. She waited. "Why now?" she asked softly. No clipboard, no pen, just the question. I stared at the rug, tracing its swirls with my eyes. Thanksgiving. My mum uninvited me. Dr. Heller tilted her head. And how did she say it? I recited the text without inflection. I'd rehearsed it. We're keeping things peaceful this year. Hope you understand. She blinked. That was all. No gasp. No shocked reaction. Just space. Space that dared me to keep going. I didn't. Not yet. Instead, I asked, what's the word for when you feel like you're losing your place in your own life, but everyone around you acts like that's normal? She considered. Dispossession? Alienation? I shook my head. No, it's smaller, quieter. Like subtraction that no one notices until you're gone. Dr. Heller didn't fill the silence. She never did. That was what made her dangerous. And safe. Finally, she asked, does she know? I blinked. Who? Your mother. My lips pressed together. The air in the room shifted. Have you ever told her the truth? She said gently. Not the polite version. Not the one you edit for peace. The truth. I let out a breath that tasted metallic. And then I laughed. It wasn't joyful. It wasn't bitter. It was the kind of laugh that sounded like it came from a place 6 feet underground. Tell her the truth, I repeated. I did. Once. A long time ago. What happened? She said I was being dramatic. The words dropped like lead on the carpet. I didn't look at her. My hands were trembling now, so I tucked them under my thighs. She said it wasn't that bad, I continued, that I was too sensitive, that I probably misunderstood. Dr. Heller didn't react, but I saw her shoulders shift, just slightly. And when I stopped talking about it, I said, things got easier. For everyone. But not for you. I nodded slowly. Not for me. We sat in the quiet, the kind that wasn't peaceful, the kind that throbbed in your ears. After a while, she asked, do you still believe her? That question lodged in my throat. I opened my mouth, closed it, then said, no, I don't. Then what do you believe now? I stared at the window where the sunlight hit the corner of the frame. I believe she heard me the first time, I said finally, and chose not to, Dr. Heller nodded once. That's not nothing, Kate. I stood to leave. My knees were tight, like they'd locked into grief too long ignored. Outside, the wind hit me sharp in the face as I walked toward the parking garage. The sky was blinding. I paused at the railing, cars humming below. She heard me. She just chose someone else. The cafe was small and crowded, the kind of place where everyone pretended to write novels while refreshing their notifications. I wasn't supposed to be there. My usual spot was across town near the hospital, but I'd taken a detour, craving anonymity more than caffeine. I was halfway through a bland bagel and a cup of lukewarm coffee when it happened. Kate? I looked up. The barista wasn't speaking to me directly. She was reading a name on a takeout order. But the way her eyebrows lifted when she glanced over made something in my chest tighten. Sorry, I said, confused. She smiled. Your name's Kate, right? I nodded cautiously. She wiped her hands on her apron and leaned a little closer. Do you know Mike Hamilton? The name landed like a fist between my ribs. I blinked. Why? Oh, he used to talk about you all the time. He came in here last month with a real estate agent. Said this place had history. She laughed like it was sweet. Anyway, he's getting married. Like soon, I think. The air around me turned viscous. I couldn't breathe right, couldn't move. She was still talking. They looked so happy. His fiancée's this tall brunette, super stylish. I just thought, small world, right? I stood too quickly. The chair scraped loud against the floor. People turned to look. Sorry, I muttered, abandoning my coffee, my plate, my moment of peace. Outside, the cold hit harder than before. Sharp, bracing. Like punishment for pretending I could live quietly. Like the universe slapping my wrist for thinking I was invisible. Mike. Here. Talking about me. Smiling. Bringing someone new into a place he knew I might return to. Getting married. The words looped in my brain, skipping like a broken record. He was supposed to be a closed chapter. A burnt page. A box buried deep with locks and warning signs. And now he was a name on someone else's lips. Casual, careless, like history had no weight. I walked fast. Nowhere specific. Just moving. My phone buzzed. A text from my sister. Thanksgiving was lovely. Mike was in great spirits. Mum said it was the calmest year ever. I stopped mid-step. Calmest year ever. The message was barbed wire wrapped in lace, polite on the outside, twisted underneath. I didn't reply. I couldn't. Instead, I walked until the buildings changed, the sidewalks cracked, the air smelled like motor oil instead of roasted beans. I ended up at a bus stop, unsure how long I'd been moving. There was a man slouched on the bench beside me, humming to himself, hands stuffed in a windbreaker. He didn't ask questions, didn't look at me. I sat beside him, still trembling. In the reflection of the bus shelter's glass, I saw myself. Flushed cheeks, damp hairline, eyes wide with something between horror and realization. They weren't just erasing me quietly. They were building a new story without me. One where I'd never existed. And worse, one where he was safe enough to be celebrated. He'd told someone this place had history. Did he mean our history? Did he remember what happened behind that alley door, Pane, where no one could hear? My stomach turned. And what about her? The brunette. The stylish new chapter. Did she know anything? Or was she just the next blank page? The bus arrived. I didn't get on. I needed something else now. Not just space, not just silence. I needed to be seen. The number wasn't hard to find. It took me 20 minutes in the hospital parking lot. Still in scrubs, still numb, clicking through mutual contacts and piecing together fragments. Her name was Rachel Hines, age 30, works in PR. One of those people who smiled too big in every photo and never wore the same outfit twice. I remembered her vaguely from a holiday party 4 years ago, standing near the shrimp cocktail and laughing at something Mike said. Now she was his future, and she didn't know. The contact info was listed on a professional event site. No need to dig deep. I stared at the number. My finger hovered, then pulled back, then hovered again. It was almost funny. How easy it was to reach someone who had no idea how much of your life they were about to step into. I wasn't going to call. Not really, but I needed something to do with the pressure building in my chest. So I hit dial. Once. Let it ring once. Then ended it. Twice. A third time. I told myself it was just to hear the sound, just to prove she was real, that this wasn't all in my head. But then, on the 4th try, the screen didn't buzz once. It connected. Hello? Her voice was light, confident, happy. I froze. My mouth was dry. I couldn't speak, couldn't even breathe. Hello? She repeated. Is someone there? I dropped the phone. It clattered to the passenger seat. I sat frozen, heart hammering as the call timed out. Outside, a family passed with grocery bags, laughing as a kid tripped over the curb. I wanted to scream. Instead, I picked the phone back up, stared at the call log. The missed call. The 3 attempts before. The proof of my own unraveling. I didn't have a plan. But that voice. So steady. So cheerful. She didn't sound scared. She hadn't seen the version of him I knew, and that terrified me because maybe, just maybe, she didn't know what she was walking into. I put the phone down again and gripped the steering wheel. My hands were shaking. My vision blurred. I'd spent the last year trying to forget his voice, and now mine had failed me. I sat there for what felt like hours. Eventually the sun shifted. Shadows changed. I was still in the same spot, same seat, same war inside my lungs. Finally I started the car, but I didn't drive home. I didn't know where I was going until I passed the city library and saw the mural on the wall, the one I used to sit under during med school breaks. A mosaic of faces and hands and cracked mirrors. I parked, walked past it, kept walking until I found a bench in the park near the reflecting pool. I sat, listened. There was a couple arguing by the hot dog cart, 2 teens taking selfies by the fountain. Normal life, I used to want that, crave it. But now all I wanted was silence that didn't punish me. I pulled out my phone again, typed a message, deleted it, typed another, deleted it too. Eventually I opened the contact. Her name stared back at me, the unanswered question. I clicked, send message, just 1 line. You don't know me, but you need to. Then I locked the phone, tossed it in my bag like it burned. I didn't know if she'd reply. But the first stone had been thrown. The reply came 12 minutes later. I saw the notification while standing in the line at the pharmacy, clutching a bottle of ibuprofen I didn't need. The message lit up my lock screen like a flare in the dark. Rachel Hines. I've been waiting. That was it. Not, who is this? Not, wrong number. Not, what do you mean? Just that. I stepped out of the line without buying anything and ducked into the alley beside the building. The cold smacked me clean across the face, but I needed air, or space, or time, maybe all three. I reread the message 5 times, as if a different interpretation would appear if I blinked fast enough. I've been waiting. Waiting. For me? Or waiting for someone, anyone, to confirm what she suspected. I typed 3 different responses, deleted all of them. Finally, I sent, "Do you want to meet?" She replied before I'd even locked the screen. "Yes, I already booked the place. Tomorrow, 6:00 p.m. There was a location, a small cafe downtown, public, neutral, smart. I stared at the screen long after the phone went dark. This wasn't how I thought she'd respond. I expected confusion, denial, defensiveness, a wall, not a door, not something this prepared. The next 24 hours passed like anesthesia, slow, muffled, unreal. At the hospital, I misread charts and dropped my clipboard twice. One patient asked if I was okay. I nodded, said allergies. But under the surface, every second ticked louder. By the time 5:30 arrived, I was already sitting outside the cafe in my car, heart pounding like it was trying to break its own ribs. At 5:58, I walked in. The cafe was warm, dim, half full. The kind of place where secrets could hide in steam and syrup. I spotted her instantly. She was sitting in the back by the window, wearing a long coat and a black turtleneck, hair pinned up, not smiling. When she saw me, she didn't wave. She just nodded once. I walked over, stomach tight. "Rachel," she stood. "Kate." Her voice was steadier than mine would have been. We sat, silence stretched between us, held taut like thread about to snap. Finally, she spoke. "I wasn't sure if it was you," she said, "but when I saw the message, I hoped." "Hoped?" I echoed. She nodded. "I've been getting signs, small things, shifts in tone, slips in stories." I blinked. "You've been suspicious?" Her mouth twitched. "He talks in riddles when he's nervous." I started noticing the patterns months ago. Things didn't add up. A cancelled hotel, a bruised knuckle with no explanation. Then, the voicemail. I straightened. "What voicemail?" She shook her head. "Doesn't matter. What matters is..." I started digging. And your name kept surfacing. Muted, shadowed, but it was there. I felt the room tilt. "You knew who I was?" "I knew you existed. I didn't know what to believe." I exhaled slowly. "And now?" She met my eyes. "I don't want to guess anymore." The server interrupted us. She ordered tea. I declined. When we were alone again, Rachel leaned in slightly. "I need you to tell me what you're not saying." I looked down at my hands. "You're not ready," she said quietly. "But I am." She pulled something from her coat, a manila folder. It thudded lightly onto the table. Inside was a wedding invitation, their names in embossed script, the date, the venue, and under it, a copy of an incident report, unfiled, but written. I stared at the ink like it was bleeding. "You wrote this," I whispered. She nodded. I thought I was losing my mind. I looked up. "You're not." Her shoulders trembled, not from fear, from relief. The folder sat between us, untouched now. Neither of us moved for a long time. The murmur of other cafe conversations blurred into a low, meaningless hum. Outside the window, Christmas lights blinked across the street like mocking reminders that this was supposed to be the season of warmth, of family. But the air around our table was cold, tight. Rachel finally spoke, her voice low. "I didn't know he'd be there, Kate, I swear." I studied her face. It didn't flinch. She wasn't lying. Not even a flicker of hesitation. "You didn't invite him?" I asked again, just to be sure. "No," she said. "Your mum did." The sentence landed like a blow to the chest. I choked. "My mum?" She nodded, slowly. I didn't believe it at first either, but he said it outright. They'd been reconnecting for weeks, apparently, weekly calls, even visited your family's house. Said it was her idea to have him come. My throat tightened. That's not possible. She barely speaks to anyone who makes her look bad. Rachel raised an eyebrow. He doesn't make her look bad. He makes you look dramatic. My jaw clenched so hard it ached. Did she know what you were to each other? Rachel asked. I laughed once, bitter and sharp. She knew enough. She knew the version I tried to survive, and she hated the mess it made of our family holidays. Rachel looked down at her hands. Then I guess this was her version of reclaiming peace. Peace, that word again. They'd all used it, like silence was the goal, like pretending was healing. I stood up too fast, chair scraping again, this time in a storm of noise and heat. Rachel didn't stop me. Outside, the air bit hard. My fingers were stiff as I fumbled for my keys. But I didn't go to my car. I walked. Fast. Nowhere in particular. Just away. The streetlights blurred past. I passed a window display with fake snow and glittering ornaments, and it made me want to scream. I pulled out my phone. Scrolled, found my mum's contact. I didn't call. I didn't trust my voice. Instead, I texted 2 words. You knew. Then I turned the phone off. I kept walking. It started to rain. Just lightly. Enough to sting. The truth settled in my bones like ice. She knew. She hadn't forgotten. Hadn't misunderstood. Hadn't been manipulated. She chose him. Over me. Again. And this time, she'd made it public. Made it performative. Thanksgiving wasn't just a meal. It was a statement. A restructuring of the family hierarchy. One where I no longer existed. By the time I got back to my car, my coat was soaked. My hands numb. My heart. Something else entirely. I sat behind the wheel, still not turning the ignition. In the passenger seat sat the folder Rachel had given me. That report. My handwriting. My words. A version of myself I hadn't looked at in over a year. For the first time, I didn't feel afraid to read it. I opened it, read every line, and when I got to the last paragraph, I didn't cry, I didn't shake, I just breathed. For the first time in weeks, maybe months, I felt something settle into place. I wasn't crazy, I wasn't dramatic, I wasn't wrong. I was erased, and now I was done whispering. It came in a white envelope, thick paper, gold trim. The kind reserved for weddings, christenings, or fundraisers for people with double-barreled last names. It was waiting in my mailbox like a ghost. I didn't recognize the return address. Just the family name, the Hamiltons. My first instinct was to drop it, but I didn't. I carried it upstairs like it might detonate, closed the door behind me, and stood in the kitchen staring at it while my tea went cold. I told myself not to open it. I'd just found balance. I'd just decided not to engage. But I tore it open anyway. Inside was a folded card. Cream stock, letterpress font, embossed edges. You are cordially invited to an evening of celebration in honor of Michael Hamilton, rising star in non-profit security innovation. His photo was centered below the header. Polished, smiling, in a suit, like a politician, like a war hero, like a man whose name deserved printing in metallic foil. My fingers gripped the card until the edges bit into my palm. The location? A waterfront ballroom. The host? Diana Whitman, my mother, and under her name, family liaison. Family. They used the word like it still included me. At the bottom, in handwritten script, would love to see you there, sweetie. Come early if you want a seat near the stage. XO. Mum. I dropped the card. It fluttered onto the table like nothing had happened. My whole body vibrated. Not from surprise, from insult. This wasn't a peace offering. It was a spotlight. And I was being invited not as a daughter, but as an audience. To watch, to clap, to validate. The ceremony was scheduled for Saturday, 3 days away. And I knew what it was. Not just some vague non-profit party. It was the same event my mother had begged to get involved in for years. The gala where city donors rubbed elbows with politicians, where reputations were minted and deals born in whispers. She had finally made it. and she had brought him as her entrance pass. I texted Rachel. "Did you get one?" Her reply came instantly. "Yes, just now, I'm shaking." I stared at her message until my screen dimmed. I didn't know what scared me more, the fact that she'd been included or the fact that she'd never been supposed to receive it. This wasn't about peace. This was performance. This was proof that my mother had chosen her character for the show, and I wasn't in the cast. I left the apartment that night without a plan. I drove until the city lights blurred past and my GPS gave up recalculating. I parked outside an old diner near the highway, the kind that never closed, with chipped mugs and sticky booths and servers who didn't ask questions. I sat at the counter and ordered nothing. After 10 minutes, an older woman behind the bar refilled my empty cup and said, "Whatever it is, you'll survive it, even if they don't deserve to see how." I didn't cry. I just nodded, hands around the warmth I hadn't asked for. When I got back home, the card was still on the table. I didn't tear it. I placed it under a glass paperweight. A reminder. Not of him. Of her. She'd signed it with a kiss, but it felt like a knife. Rachel texted at midnight. I was already awake, lying on my side, watching the blinking light from the street lamp cut across the ceiling like a metronome for memories I didn't ask to revisit. Her message was short. No emojis. No hesitation. "If I go, I need you beside me." I stared at the words, my heart thrumming. She followed it up 30 seconds later. "Not for backup. For balance." That broke me a little. Not for drama, not for performance. For balance. I got up, pulled on my robe, walked to the kitchen and poured a glass of water I never drank. Just held it, let it cool the shake in my hands. I typed, erased, then finally sent, "Okay, I'll be there." The next morning we met at a small boutique near Midtown. Rachel had insisted, "If we're walking into a theatre, we need wardrobe." I expected tight sequins or plunging backs. Instead, she handed me a deep emerald dress with long sleeves and subtle weight. Clean lines, no frills. It felt like armor disguised as elegance. "You'll look untouchable in this," she said. I tried it on. The fabric held me like it knew I was trying not to fall apart. She chose a midnight blue one for herself. High neckline, floor length. The kind of dress that said, "I don't need to speak to be heard." At checkout, the stylist asked, "Is this for something special?" Rachel answered before I could. Yes, a funeral, of sorts. That night, I sat on my couch staring at the invitation under the paperweight. A few hours ago, it had felt like a weapon. Now it felt like a door. One I didn't have to walk through alone. The gala was held in a private glass atrium near the waterfront, a place built for photos, not comfort. All light and marble and echo. We arrived 15 minutes before it started. The valet took the car. Rachel and I stood at the edge of the parking circle, staring up at the glowing facade. From here we could see the silhouettes, wine glasses clinking, laughter bouncing, dresses shimmering like armor in motion. She turned to me. "Still okay?" I nodded. Still breathing. We walked in. The hostess barely looked up as she scanned our names. "You're in the donor wing, to the right." We followed the sound of chamber music and clinking silver. Then we entered. And everything paused. My mother stood at the far end of the room, framed by white roses and a rented spotlight. Her dress was burgundy silk, her hair freshly curled, and at her side, him. Mike, in a grey suit, polished shoes, that same smug half-smile I'd seen in the court of my nightmares. His hand rested lightly on her back. Rachel tensed beside me. "I need a second." "Take it," I whispered. I watched as she slipped into the edge of the crowd, gathering herself like breath before a plunge. I stood alone, surrounded by the very people who had been blind to my absence for years. A waiter approached with champagne. I declined. My mother spotted me. Her smile twitched, almost imperceptibly. Then she turned back to her conversation. Not a nod, not a wave, not a flicker of guilt. Rachel returned a moment later, her eyes steel. "Let's make sure they see us," she said quietly, and together we stepped into the light. The ballroom lights dimmed and a soft hush swept through the room like rehearsed reverence. The clink of glasses slowed. Conversations faded into breathy murmurs. On stage, the MC smiled and tapped the microphone. And now a few words from someone who has watched Michael's rise with pride, with hope, and with the heart of a mother. Heart of a mother. My own mother stood from her table, the one at the front, beneath the chandelier where family was meant to sit, and glided to the stage like she belonged there. Rachel stiffened beside me. I felt her fingers twitch near mine. My mother took the mic with both hands and exhaled like this was her moment too. "Thank you all for being here," she began. "When I think of Michael, I think of resilience." I didn't blink. "His journey hasn't been easy," she continued. "He faced challenges that would have crushed most people, but instead of folding, he fought. He rebuilt. He proved that no mistake defines you if you're willing to change." The audience nodded along. Some clapped softly. Mistake. Singular. Undefined. My jaw locked. "And I know some people," she said, glancing toward the crowd, not at me, but in my direction. "Some people want to define others by shadows, but I believe in light, in second chances, in forgiveness." My fingers curled into fists. Rachel leaned in. "She's not just protecting him, she's using you." The applause was quiet but polite, polished. My mother smiled wider. "Michael has shown true growth. And it's my honor to support not only his professional journey, but his personal one. His future is bright. And I'm proud to say, he's part of our family." The clapping intensified. I felt something snap inside me. Not a scream, not even a sob. Just a cold, clean break where hope used to live. Rachel whispered, "We don't have to stay." But I couldn't move, because it wasn't just the lies. It was the theft. She had taken my story, my pain, and rewritten it into his redemption arc. I didn't recognize her face anymore. The woman on that stage wasn't my mother. She was a narrator in someone else's script, and she was good at it. She stepped down from the podium to more applause, accepted a kiss on the cheek from Mike, and waved at the crowd like a first lady leaving a charity gala. Rachel looked at me. "Say the word, we're gone." But I wasn't ready, because I knew something now. I hadn't come for revenge, I hadn't come to be seen, I had come because I needed to witness it. Every lie, every omission, every choice. To burn it into my memory so I'd never forget what silence sounded like in a room full of applause. The MC took the stage again. "Let's raise our glasses." But I was already walking away, not out the door, toward the side of the ballroom, past the flower arrangements and photo displays, toward the long hallway that led to the private prep rooms. Rachel followed. No questions. I reached the coat check corridor, pulled open the fire door and stepped into the cold backstage air. We stood there a moment, just breathing. Then Rachel said, "What now?" I looked out at the darkness beyond the loading dock and answered, "We rewrite it back." We sat in Rachel's car under the flickering light of the staff parking deck. Neither of us spoke for a full minute. The gala buzz still echoed behind us, but out here, it was just concrete. Quiet, and the sound of breath trying not to shake. Rachel reached into her clutch and pulled out a folded printout. "I wasn't sure when to show you this," she said, "but after that speech, I think you should see it now." She unfolded the paper, passed it to me. It was a spreadsheet. Names, dates, clinic headers, note fragments. "What is this?" I asked. She tapped the third line. "Look here. That's the name he used when he applied for that non-profit board, except..." She slid another paper from her purse, a photocopy of a public record. Same man, different name, different city. 5 years earlier. "He lied about his history," she said. "The timeline, the organizations, the jobs, and this one," she pointed to another name farther down the sheet. "This one shows up twice. Once in a complaint, once in an internal review." I scanned the entry. Lena Voss, former volunteer coordinator, Hospital Auxiliary Group. "Do you know her?" I asked. Rachel nodded. "She left the program 2 years ago, no explanation, but she filed a sealed grievance before she walked." I found her number. I blinked. "You what?" "I called," Rachel said. She wouldn't say much, just one thing. "If it's about him, I'll talk, but not over the phone." My stomach turned. "She sounded scared?" I asked. Rachel didn't hesitate. "No," she sounded ready. "A name." A record. A crack in the wall. For the first time, it wasn't just me, and it wasn't just Rachel. There were others. Ghosts stitched into paperwork, forced out of rooms quietly, so he could rise. I folded the page slowly. "Why didn't you tell me this before?" I asked. "I needed to be sure you were ready," Rachel said, "and that I wasn't dragging you deeper into something you'd already fought to climb out of." I looked at her. Really looked. She wasn't trembling anymore. Her jaw was tight, her spine straight. "I'm in," I said. She nodded once. "Where is Lena now?" I asked. "Upstate. I told her we could meet in person." She picked the place. "Tomorrow afternoon." I exhaled, cold air fogging the window. "Then we go." We sat in the car a little longer, the engine off, music from a nearby party drifting faintly through the trees. "I don't know what she'll say," Rachel admitted. "She doesn't have to say everything," I replied. "She just has to confirm what we already feel." Rachel turned the key in the ignition. "This won't be clean. Or safe." "It's never been either," I said. She pulled out of the parking deck and we drove in silence. Not because there was nothing to say, but because some moments aren't meant to be narrated. They're meant to burn. The drive upstate was grey and endless. Bare trees lined the highway like skeletal witnesses. Rachel gripped the wheel tighter than usual, her eyes scanning every sign, every exit, like something might jump out and change the route. I sat beside her, the folder still on my lap. The one with names, timelines, the truth. "You think she'll show?" I asked. "She picked the place," Rachel said. "She sounded certain. She even gave me the name of the diner and said she'd sit by the window." I nodded, but the tightness in my chest didn't ease. Lena Voss. I hadn't said her name out loud, not yet. Saying it would make it too real. Another woman. Another scar in the same shape. The diner sat just off a two-lane road flanked by frostbitten cornfields and shuttered antique shops. It looked like something out of a postcard. Red trim, white siding, a hand-painted open sign swaying in the cold wind. We parked, walked in, and stopped. She wasn't there. There was no one by the window, no one who looked like they were waiting. The waitress behind the counter glanced up. "Just you two?" Rachel stepped forward. "We're supposed to meet someone. Lena. She said she'd be here." The woman frowned. "Lena Voss?" "Yes." She wiped her hands on a towel. "She called this morning, said something came up. Didn't say what. Told me to tell you she's sorry." Rachel's face didn't move, but I felt the air shift. "Did she say anything else?" I asked. The waitress shrugged. "Just said not to wait." We left without ordering. Back in the car, Rachel didn't start the engine right away. "I confirmed with her last night," she said. She was calm, direct. Said she'd be there no matter what. I stared out at the empty lot. Only two other cars, neither hers. "What if someone warned her off?" I said. Rachel didn't respond, but the look on her face was enough. The road back was quieter, not tense but heavy. Something had changed. By the time we pulled into the city, night had swallowed the streets. Rachel parked in her complex garage and killed the engine. Before I got out, she said, "We're not giving up." "I know," I said. She looked at me. "You don't seem surprised." "I'm not. This is what he does. He erases." Rachel reached into the back seat and handed me a manila envelope. "Keep this, just in case." "What is it?" "Everything we have, copied. I scanned it last week. Sent it to myself, too." I held it tight. "I don't know where this ends," she said, "but I'm not letting it end quiet." Neither am I. We stood in the stairwell a moment longer before parting. I walked home through wind that bit like warning. When I got inside, I locked the door. Twice. Then I sat at the kitchen table, unfolded the envelope. There was the timeline, the report, the names, and at the very bottom, a new addition. A note from Rachel. "If I disappear, show this to her." No name, but I knew who she meant, and I knew what I had to do next. I didn't sleep that night. The envelope stayed on the table, unopened again after my first read, but it wasn't fear keeping me awake. It was a low hum beneath the skin, a vibration that felt like the moment before a lightning strike. At 3:17 a.m., my phone buzzed. I didn't recognize the number, just a voicemail alert. No missed call, No text. Just a recording waiting in the shadows of my inbox like it had always been there. I opened it. The voice was faint, almost buried in static, but I knew it. Rachel. The first word was my name. Then silence. Then, if you hear this before I speak to you, I was right. She knows. The woman with the clipboard at the gala. Not an assistant. She followed me to the coat room. A shuffle of fabric. A door hinge. She asked if I'd seen the folder. I didn't lie. But I didn't confirm. A long pause. Kate, you need to know. Someone was tipped off. Maybe not Mike. Maybe someone closer. I don't know how far this goes, but it's not just family politics anymore. It's curated, controlled. A sound, like a knock. Then Rachel again, louder now. Don't trust your mother, and don't show up alone. Ever. The message ended mid-breath. I sat frozen, phone still pressed to my ear long after it went silent. How had it gotten there? Rachel never asked for my voicemail number. I hadn't given it. And yet, she knew it would reach me. She knew someone was playing angles deeper than we'd assumed. I replayed the phrase. It's curated. Controlled. It wasn't just a cover-up. It was choreography. A system built to edit the past, smooth the edges, erase the wrong names before they could stain the polished surface. I got up and checked the front door again. Still locked. Still double-bolted. But the air inside my apartment felt thinner, like someone had stood too close for too long. At sunrise, I met Rachel at the corner cafe, the same one where this spiral had started. She looked pale but focused. She hadn't slept either. I got your voicemail, I said. She blinked. I never sent one. I pulled out my phone and let her listen. Halfway through, her hand covered her mouth. That wasn't meant to go through, she whispered. I recorded it in case something happened. To myself. I kept it on a backup line. How did it forward to me? She shook her head slowly. Someone's watching our signals. That's not paranoia anymore. I sat back. Every thread was tightening, every corner closing. Rachel exhaled. It's not just about exposing him now, it's about outlasting what protects him. My tea sat untouched. What's next? I asked. She leaned forward. I filed the sealed complaint. I blinked. You what? I listed it under my name, referenced Lena, referenced the board's silence. I gave them 48 hours to respond before I make it public. I stared at her. You did this without telling me? I had to, she said. Because if I didn't, I wouldn't have done it at all. The storm had started, and Rachel had thrown the first real match. The message came through the next morning at 9:42 a.m. Rachel forwarded it with a single line. They want you in the room. Attached was a formal summons, not legal but firm. A board-mandated review, closed session. Attendance optional but strongly encouraged. I read the wording over and over. You are invited to provide oral context to the complaint submitted regarding Michael Hamilton's professional conduct and conflict of interest relationships involving affiliated board members. It didn't say allegations. It didn't say incident. Just conduct, which meant they weren't denying it. They were pre-spinning it. I replied to Rachel, "What are they hoping I'll say?" She answered instantly, "What they don't expect you to." We met outside the building, a sleek, faceless complex downtown, with windows that never reflected the sky quite right. Rachel wore a blazer-like armor. I wore black, not for intimidation, for clarity. Inside, security scanned us and handed me a badge. Visitor, temporary authorization. The label stung more than I thought it would. They guided us to a waiting area outside a boardroom. A man in a grey suit with no name tag approached me 10 minutes later. "Ms. Whitman?" he asked. I nodded. "We'll bring you in second. Mr. Hamilton is currently answering question." Of course he is, I thought, not testifying, not explaining, answering questions. They were calling him first so he could set the tone, plant his version, control the palette before we walked in. I asked, "Am I allowed to bring notes?" He nodded. "Keep them brief." I didn't have any. I didn't need them. When they called me in, the door closed behind me with a sound that felt final. 12 people sat at a long mahogany table. Not one of them looked surprised to see me. Only one smiled. the woman at the far left. Silver hair, red lipstick, eyes like someone who had once raised sons to fear no one. The chair in the centre gestured. Ms. Whitman, thank you for agreeing to speak today. I sat. Across the room on the far right sat Mike. His suit was fresh. His tie, dark green. He didn't look at me. Please describe your understanding of the complaint submitted to this board, someone asked. I inhaled and began. I'm not here for a narrative, I said. I'm here for context. The context you erased. A few pens shifted on the table. I was engaged to Michael Hamilton 4 years ago. Our relationship ended after a private incident that never reached police, but did reach every room of my family's house. Mike still didn't look up. I didn't press charges, but I documented everything, verbally, in writing, to a therapist, to colleagues, to myself. I paused. In the years since, I've watched him climb through spaces I was warned away from. Boards, committees, panels where image mattered more than background checks. And I stayed quiet. A man in the middle asked, "Why come forward now?" I stared at him. Because silence, I said, is not the same thing as healing. Another leaned in. Do you have documentation? Rachel stood outside the door, envelope in hand, waiting for my cue. I do, sir, I said. And is this documentation corroborated? I looked at Mike for the first time. His jaw was tight, his hands clasped. Yes, I said clearly, but it is. The chairwoman nodded. We'll recess in 15 minutes. You may step out. I stood, heart pounding but even. When I opened the door, Rachel was already handing me the file. I didn't say anything. I didn't need to. It was their turn now. The board didn't call me back in. Instead, Rachel and I waited 2 hours in the lobby, drinking stale coffee and watching people who had decided our fate walk past like they were late for brunch. When the door finally opened, a younger assistant stepped out and handed me a statement, typed, folded, official. From the board, she said. Effective immediately. I unfolded it, read the first sentence. Michael Hamilton has submitted his voluntary resignation to avoid further distraction to the board's initiatives. No apology, no investigation, no admission, just resignation. A clean-up, a controlled collapse. I laughed. It came out sharp, uninvited. The assistant flinched. I shook my head. Thanks, I said. Really? She retreated without another word. Rachel stood behind me, eyes scanning the statement. He gets to walk. Of course he does, I replied. That's what they built this room for. Soft landings. She nodded slowly. It's not nothing. No, I said, folding the paper again. It's not nothing. But it's still not the truth. Outside, the wind had picked up. Autumn was dying. The air felt thinner, more brittle, like something in the world was ready to snap. We parted ways 2 blocks later. Rachel headed home. I walked. I didn't want to return to my apartment. I needed movement, needed to keep the blood from freezing where it settled. I was halfway through the park when I got the text from my mother. Come by, just for a moment. Let's talk. I stared at it so long the screen went dim. She hadn't called, hadn't messaged me in weeks. Not even after the gala. Not after the speech. Or the file. Or the meeting. But now that the silence was over and the image threatened to fray. Now she wanted to talk. I didn't answer. I went. Her apartment sat in the high-rise she'd always dreamed of. Glass balconies, concierge in the lobby, minimalist furniture untouched by warmth. She answered the door in silk, her eyes tired but clear. Kate, she said, like the word was both apology and defense. I stepped in. She didn't offer tea, didn't hug me, just gestured to the couch. We sat. Silence thickened. Then she spoke. You know I didn't want it to get this far. This far? I asked. You mean truth? I mean noise, she said. Scandal. Pain. The kind we don't come back from. You came back from it just fine, I said coldly. You had a gala. Her face pinched. You're angry. I'm done, I said. I didn't know what else to do, she said. He made mistakes, but he was trying. You thought I'd stay quiet. She didn't deny it. Instead, she reached into a drawer and pulled out a check. Folded. Heavy. I don't want this to divide us, she said. I didn't touch it. You think this is about money? I think it's about power, she whispered. And you've got it now. Please don't use it against me. I stood up. She flinched. You lost me a long time ago, I said. Now you just get to feel it. And I walked out. Not just from her apartment, but from her story. I didn't sleep the night after I left her apartment. Not because of rage, not because of grief, but because of clarity. I sat at the same kitchen table where the envelope had once waited for me, where Rachel and I had drawn maps in silence, where names had been whispered like questions we were afraid to answer. Now the names had weight. They weren't ghosts anymore. They were anchors. By sunrise, the decision was made. I pulled out the file, the one Rachel copied, the one we weren't supposed to have. And I opened my notebook. Not digital, not encrypted, just paper, ink, hand. I wrote, "This is not a confession. It's not a warning. It's a record. And it's mine." Each sentence came without effort, not because it was easy, but because it had been waiting for years. I didn't include every detail, not because they didn't matter, but because some wounds don't deserve re-exposure. Some pain isn't for performance, but I named what mattered. I named him. I named the timeline. And for the first time, I named her. My mother. Not to accuse, not to shame, to document, because the most dangerous betrayal is not the one that strikes loudest. It's the one that teaches you to silence yourself before anyone else has to. By the time I reached the final line, my hand was sore. I signed it only once. Kate Whitman. Then I walked to the copy centre near my hospital, printed 50 copies. No watermark, no gloss, just weight. I placed the first inside a library drop box, the second in the mailbox of a local journalist who never took bribes, the third under the door of the board's ethics officer, and the last, I left it on my mother's porch. No envelope, no note, just the truth, visible, undeniable. I didn't wait for a reply. I didn't check the news, I didn't read comments. Instead, I met Rachel at the waterfront diner where the story had almost turned to dust. She smiled when she saw me. We sat. We didn't talk about the fallout. We talked about books, about the leaves changing, about how pain moves when you stop making it your compass. The check my mother offered me. I tore it in half and flushed it by ear, slowly, deliberately, down the hospital restroom sink. I didn't want repayment. I wanted freedom. Weeks passed. Some people asked questions, some never looked me in the eye again. And one night, I got a message from Lena. 4 words. "I saw your letter." That was all. And that was enough. Because now she wasn't a footnote. And neither was I. There was no grand ending, no court decision, no applause, but there was peace. And I wrote my final line in the same notebook months later, after the world had moved on and the headlines faded. She called it drama. I called it survival. And this time I didn't need her to believe me.